This week we're doing a little bit of an experiment with agave nectar. We're going to see if it can be used in an old fashioned without changing the flavour. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, today we're doing a little bit of an experiment. We're seeing if agave nectar can be used in place of sugar syrup for the same kind of result in a classic cocktail. And what better way to try it out than with an old fashioned? Because for me, the old fashioned is like the core of cocktails because it's just whiskey, sugar, and bitter. So if you change one of those core ingredients, you're going to get a very different cocktail at the end of the day. So let's go into our ingredients. So for our whiskey, we're going to have this here, the Whistler Double Oaked Irish Whiskey. Kind of a simple, standard enough, classic Irish whiskey. It's been bourbon aged, finished in a sherry cask, so you get the kind of caramel, vanilla, butterscotch notes you'd expect from that bourbon aging, but then with a bit of fruity note, a bit of like red berries, things like that from that sherry cask finishing. For my agave syrup, I didn't make my own. This is just store-bought agave that I popped into a little glass jar. As you can see, it's quite loose. It should pour. It's like a very thick sugar syrup, and I kind of got the idea for using this in a cocktail recipe because I was talking to one of my friends in the Irish Whiskey Society, and he said that he really liked looking at a lot of my cocktail recipes, but because he's diabetic, he couldn't try them all because there's always a lot of sugar, whether it's sugar syrup or there's maybe a soda or something that's quite sugary, so he can't always try the recipes. And I did a bit of looking up online, and people said that agave nectar can be used as a less sugary substitute, but still quite sweet. So that's why I'm using a bit of agave. It isn't fully sugar-free, it's not like a sugar-free anything, but it just has a little bit less sugar. So if you are trying to use less sugar but still get a sweetness, apparently it's a good substitute, and that's what we're going to find out today. And finally, for my old-fashioned, I always go in with Angostura bitters and orange bitters, because for me they're like your salt and your pepper. Angostura has this classic flavor, has this kind of like herbal, botanical, spicy note, which adds a lot of flavor, but then the orange bitters gives a bit of lightness and a bit of brightness to make sure the cocktail isn't just all the way dominated by those Angostura bitters. So that's enough time talking about the cocktail. I think it's time we make it. It is going to be a stir drink, so we're going to get our mixing glass and we're going to pop a nice rock of ice into there before we measure out our ingredients. For me, for my old fashions, especially something simple like this where I'm not adding like an alcoholic ingredient to add a bit of sweetness, I always go in with 2 ounces or 60 ml of my whiskey. So that's what I'm going to do here today. I'm going to go in with 60 ml. I'm going to make this as classic and old-fashioned as I can, so I can try to isolate the flavor of that agave nectar and see if it can be used as a one-to-one substitute. For my sugar, for my old-fashions, I always just kind of go in with like a heavy bar spoon, so not quite 2 bar spoons, but a little bit more than 1 bar spoon. So you pour it into your spoon, let it overflow, and then stop pouring. So that gives you about 7.5 ml of whatever sugar you're using. So it gives you a nice bit of sweetness. And I'm going to go in with my Angostura bitters. For me, 2 dashes of Angostura bitters and then 1 dash of orange bitters is the kind of the classic ratio that I always go for in my old fashions. So it's 2 dashes of mango, 1 dash of orange bitters, and I'm going to stir it down for about 30-35 seconds, get everything nice and mixed and nice and cold. Okay, I can feel that that is nicely chilled now. So I'm going to go right to strain it out. I'm going to be straining it out into a rocks glass with another fresh rock of ice into there. So I'm going to pop my strainer up top to catch that ice and drop it in just like that. And then for a garnish, I'm going to go in, keeping it classic, with a little bit of an orange zest. Express the oils over the top, rub it around the top just to get all those orangey zests, all those notes through it. Give it a little bit of a wipe on the inside of the glass to get those orange oils into the cocktail. Drop it in like that. And that right there is an agave old fashioned. Now real quick, before I taste this cocktail, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews every Wednesday and put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey like this every Friday. So if you want to see more like that, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave me a note in the comments below if there are any cocktails you think I should make in future, and if there are any ways you think I should use agave nectar in future, let me know in the comments. But right now, let's taste this cocktail. Cheers. Okay, this is actually my first time using agave nectar. I kind of wanted to have it on camera. It is quite sweet. It's actually it feels a little bit sweeter than like a classic like 1-to-1 sugar syrup. So I'm gonna go in again for another quick taste. Yeah, it tastes kind of like an old fashioned. I mean, as you'd expect, it is a sugary, at the end of the day, we've got whiskey, we've got sugar, and we've got bitter. So the only real thing we've changed is the type of sugar we're using. Maybe it's a little bit like thicker, like a honey old fashioned. Maybe it's a little bit like richer, like with that richer kind of heavier mouthfeel, but it still feels quite sweet. It still feels like I've used a sugar syrup. So it is like, yeah, if you were to put this in front of me and just say it's an old fashioned and don't say you use agave nectar, I don't think I'd probably tell the difference. I don't think I'd say, wait a second, this wasn't sugar syrup, this was agave nectar. I don't think I'd be able to tell a massive difference. But knowing that there's agave nectar in there, it does have a different mouthfeel. It does have a slightly different taste than the classic kind of white sugar or brown sugar syrup that you'd use in an old fashioned. But really, at the end of the day, it's something sweet. It's only a small amount of the total cocktail, and with those bitters, with that whiskey, you're getting a lot of other strong flavors. So if you want a slightly less sugary sweetener to use in an old fashioned or to use in any cocktails, agave nectar, I think it can be used fine. So I'm going to keep on enjoying this old fashioned, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.